Hello and welcome back to another video, and today we are back with another video. Today we have a honorable guest. His name is WaLLrus. He is the head of growth and partnership here at Liquid Loans, and today we have an interview with him kind of telling us what is Liquid Loans for you guys who don't know what they are about, and the recent news that they will be launching in October time. So we're going to be getting all those infos and questions that you guys have, and I'm super excited to be here. And yeah, we're going to just start off straight away by saying, welcome. Obviously, introduce yourself. Tell us about like your experience with crypto and your role in Liquid Loans.
Yeah, appreciate the invitation a ton, man. Thanks for reaching out. Really happy to come on and chat with you. So it's always fun to get to reach out and talk to content creators. So man, like I said, so my crypto kind of starts like a lot of people. It was originally Bitcoin. Bought a little Bitcoin and then didn't know what to do with it. It was just one of those things like, oh, you can buy rocket launchers and drugs. The government can't stop you. Cool, this is neat. Like just very juvenile. That was all it was to me at first. So it was just something interesting. I mean, it was like a video game with money. That was it. I didn't understand. It wasn't an investor mind state. None of those kind of things that some of the people that see me talk now would think. It's just something interesting, right? And so from there, it just sort of it progressed a bit. I paid attention. I always bring this one up for context about like how little I understood. So I had a couple of grand, and it was on one of the runs around, I think around 2015. It just runs up, and it goes from like 3 or 4 grand to like 10 or 11 grand. Like it goes, gains a
Hmm.
digit. And for most people, that's mentally significant, right? I went, oh, I've got more Bitcoin. Closed the phone and walked. Like it didn't even hit my brain to like, that like the reason I highlight that is like that would be one of those things that we think would be so significant. Doesn't hit the brain. I barely pay attention to crypto for the next couple of years. And it's not really until, I pay attention with Ethereum, and early on it wasn't that interesting, but as it started to
Hmm.
actually have some protocols come out, that really got me dialed in. And then when Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash split, that was when I really got engaged in the
Yeah.
space, seeing the VARs, the guys over at Blockstream, like all of that, discussion around SegWit, trying to conserve block space, bigger blocks, did they want to tighten them, and the kind of distribution of the network. It was the gamesmanship and hearing all those like very libertarian minded people speak. That's what really got me into space. So from there, it was a couple years before I did anything really forward facing. Did a lot of stuff with some things with Hex, and a lot of other interesting privacy stuff. I like Monero and Fluffy Pony and some of those guys. And then it was when PulseChain came out, that was like, oh, there's going to be this significant event again, and I wanted to be a part of it. And that's why I've been forward facing, doing all this stuff up till now. And now me and the Liquid Loans team are getting ready to launch here this, well, I guess almost, oh, it'll be next month, but it's almost this month, the very end where we're at. And
Absolutely.
man, just couldn't be more excited, brother. Couldn't be more excited.
That's sick. Yeah. Well, speaking of Liquid Loans launching next week, I heard that the teller, the fetch, has to also launch prior that. Is that true?
Correct. So Fetch has to be deployed ahead of time, and that's because Fetch is what actually gives that pricing to Liquid Loans. So LL needs an actual price feed. It needs to know what the price of Pulse is to be able to go through and handle liquidations and all those events and collateral levels. So Fetch is a decentralized oracle, and it's what allows us to get that information and decentralized into the actual smart contract so that it knows what's going on. So
Yeah,
it has to
that's
come out first.
that makes sense. Yeah. So I'm assuming you guys work well together and stuff like that. That's good to know. Well.
That we've been really fortunate with a lot of our development. So we've
Hmm.
had support from individuals in a variety of ways. We've used even like AI to help go through and vet some of the code. Again, that doesn't take the place of traditional audits, which Halborn's been our big security partner, and they have been incredible. Just quickly, when we talk about going through code and having support, it's not always the same thing. Like I mean, you can go audit and it can be a basically an hour automatic thing. It's almost like,
Yeah.
it's a difference between having like a true IT antivirus,
Yep.
security profile, and having run Norton's antivirus. It's like, guys, those are not the same thing, right?
Yeah.
So we've gone all the extra mile, and Halborn's been incredible getting that stuff ready and taking the time. The audit report for Liquid Loans, just like the Liquid Loans contract, is 54 pages. Like that's the level of in-depth process the audit went through. So yeah, we've gone the extra mile on all those things, and we'll have this stuff very punched together.
Amazing. Yeah, that's good to hear. Well, I guess now moving on to Liquid Loans. Can you tell me what is Liquid Loans and what's its vision?
Sure. So liquid loans has a couple of parts, but the main one that everyone like really gravitates toward is the zero interest loan. So you're able to take PLS, which is the native token, the best collateral on PulseChain, and you're able to basically take a collateralized loan from that. So you get just the immediate, okay, now there's lending essentially comes from that side of it. The other is that you can actually take variations of leverage with that if you'd like. You can, and then what the real magic again to me and what initially got me really excited about LL before I even took on the role I have now is the stable coin. So when you take that leverage or you take that loan, you get basically paid out in what's called USDL. And that the stable coin is pegged to $1 worth of pulse, and there's no admin keys. It's redeemable on chain. So that to me is some of the real magic. There's also some yield that comes along with the loan and the stability pool. But I think most people gravitate toward, hey, USDL is this beautiful stable coin that has great properties and the ability to lend and take leverage.
That's good to know. Yeah. Um, and I've seen in the website as well, there's like, you can actually be different types of players, not just borrowing. There is earn, borrow, stake, and redeem. Can you explain what each four means?
Sure. So we're really picky about pretty. It's underrated. Sometimes if you listen to great marketers or people in the tech space, they'll say don't undervalue cool, and that's absolutely true. Like cool is a valuable thing. It's one of those things that you get yelled at when you're a kid and you say things are cool. When you get things figured out as a grown up, being cool is really really valuable. So we're big on things being pretty. So when you look at the DApp, our DApp is really like it's very colorful. There's a lot of going to it. You see like the battery for TCR. There's just a lot of colorful symbolism, things you're used to. It looks very Web 2. Like if you pulled up that DApp, you wouldn't instantly go, oh, this is crypto, right? We have the analytics and all those things. So getting to your question, if you in the DApp in the right corner, there's actually a tour. There's a product tour. So you can click that and there's 27 prompts that'll actually walk you through the entire DApp. So like that's something you don't really see in crypto very often.
Yeah.
And then on the main page, there's 6 videos. There's the best explainer in crypto. I won't hear it. Like our 4-minute video is just absolutely dialed in. And there's explainers on all those that you just referenced. So all that stuff is built into the DApp to be easily usable. So a couple of things you touched on. So obviously the borrowing, again, that's the lending 0%. It's what's on the 10. It's right there. The other properties. So redeeming, we'll hit on redeeming last. So you can basically borrow and repay, and that's how you basically manage your position. So you can, once you put PLS in your vault, you can take USDL out, you can repay USDL, or you can add PLS to your position. So you can increase the size of your vault as well. So depending on what you're doing outside of it, how you're managing it, you have some options there. So some people will treat this like a traditional loan. Myself, other players are also going to be using it as basically a way to maximize exposure and basically be taking USDL to chase yield in other places. And then you would manage those positions a little differently.
Yeah.
The earn would be from staking the loan token or from the stability pool. So staking loans pretty simple. You have loan tokens, you stake them, and you get a paid out part of the redemption fee and the origination fee. So when people are using the protocol, those fees go to the loan token.
Yeah.
Now the stability pool is pretty interesting. So at a quick level, it's one of those that it gets better the deeper you go. But the stability pool is where you stake USDL, and whenever there's a liquidation event, that USDL is what basically covers it. So it's like buying the pulse that gets liquidated at a discount. So for traditional users or for like standard people who just go and put USDL, it's almost like having a limit order, but rather than a limit order at a price, it's a limit order at 10% whatever the current price is. So
Yeah.
it's like one of the cheapest ways to buy pulse, right? So the stability pool has a really cool function for the users. And then for the protocol, what it does is it allows us to do instant liquidations. So just quickly, most people hear instant liquidations and are like, that's terrifying. I would not want that to happen. So here, just quickly, just some framing, and then people will have to dig in a little deeper. If you go to traditional lending or even something like the MakerDAO contract, they have to be higher because they have auction based systems. So like if you think about like a bank, if they foreclose on a home, they have to take the house and get it ready and sell. There's all this extra work, right? So it takes time, and they have to have that in their as part of that like collateral ratio, right? So they have to have a bigger margin.
Yeah.
So with like MakerDAO, it was between 130, I think with some collaterals, it would get up to like 165, 170. The minimum collateral in LL is 110%. So that minimum collateral is able to be really tight because it's instant. So we don't have to have that same spread to cover how long does it take? Does the price keep dropping? All these kinds of things. So that gives us this really unique ability to make sure that that lending is very beneficial. So the minimum, so if you had to have a minimum of 150, if your position was liquidated, man, you lost 50%. In something like LL, it's 10. And like every percentage at that point is a very, very big deal. So having that instant liquidation, one, works well for those participating on the stability pool side, but it's also what tightens up that range and makes it really efficient on the liquidation side as well. So there's a lot that goes into that. Like it's overlooked if people don't have a big background there. So we have a ton of content on this, but that's one that I would really highlight, that if people you're interested in the nuts and bolts and where some of the magic is, that's a big part of it there. And then the last one, redemptions. So stable coins have to have redemptions or they're not stable coins. So when you look, you're able to always redeem USDL for $1 worth of Pulse. So what you sort of have on this market functions about keeping USDL at $1 is, let's say that USDL is at 80 cents in the liquidity pool. Okay. Well, I'm just going to let you know, I'll buy all you have of something for 80 cents that I can go give these guys over here and get $1. So when I redeem it for $1, I take that spread. The other side, the inverse, let's say that USDL is $1.25. Okay, well, I can mint USDL for $1 still. So if you're going to let me mint something for $1 and then go spend it for $1.25, I'm going to mint and keep buying. So what you have is where people will basically keep minting, keep loaning as it goes up, and then they'll keep redeeming as it goes down. And that's what helps keep that peg tight. So those are all functions that people can take advantage of, either through the arbitrage side. It's what allows users to feel secure about their USDL positions. So these things all work in tandem together, and people can, take advantage of whatever their skill set is. So if you're more of a traditional trader, our bots, like if these, if that vocabulary, that side of it's interesting, there'll be a lot of really cool mechanics about taking advantage of just that arbitrage peg. And then if you're like, hey, I don't really know what you just said there, man. Like, how do I get the cheap pulse again? You can just take USDL, stick it in the stability pool.
That's what's up. Yeah, thank you for the answer. It actually does clear a lot of things. And from hearing your answers, I know that you guys are, against over collateralization and having stuff as zero interest fees. Can you tell me what are the issues with those traditional collateralized debt platforms that LL is solving?
There are some other borrowers where the flavor makes a lot of sense. So some of the things that you'll see, like Buck and all the guys in our ecosystem, or like GMX, they offer some loans, but they're kind of tiered very, very different. Like they have interest, there'll be shorter terms, they'll have repayment schedules. They have a lot of use case. So some of those guys will use that when they're really savvy, and they'll be trying to take advantage of dips or trying to like hit liquidation. They have a lot of different market mechanics, right? So for those types of players, those loans work really, really well. And that's because they're puppet masters, right? Like they're trying to make markets. These guys know how they're trying to handle stuff. So for us, it's a little different in that it's more of a long-term, again, that 0%. It takes a big advantage in that you can basically keep that position open. So you'll see we have a few examples where people are going to be buying citizenship and houses and using LL. And that ability to have that repayment schedule and 0% allows them to like maintain exposure to the pulse price. So there's a lot of advantages there. And then over legacy, there's a couple of big ones. One is, especially if you want something like USDL. So we have this issue with USDC, USDT. One, they have to maintain the collateral, and you have to trust them. You have to trust that those guys have that somewhere. And most people don't even have the time to go through and look. I mean, when you look at, USDC, USDT, we have no idea. I mean, we hope it's all there, right? And then when you look at USDC, you can see that they can have exposures with banking partners. There's just a lot that goes on. It's very hard to really quantify that risk profile. And those guys have to have a cut, right? That efficiency that we talked about earlier, like they don't have that, right? So if they're holding treasury bonds, they have the exposure to treasury bonds. They got to be able to liquidate those things. If they're holding, commercial paper, there's exposure there. Dollars have their own price. So they have their own sort of, risk profile and issues. Whereas with LL, it's 0%. One that doesn't really get highlighted all that often is if if people are Islamic in the Middle East, they don't use interest. That's riba, it's usury.
Yep.
So by being able to build it the way we did, sort of inadvertently actually made it to where we opened it up to a huge section of the world to use some of these tools that we have in DeFi. So that's extremely cool. So again, it's the combination of that efficiency around the stability pool and liquidations allows us to have 0%, to have really tight minimum collateral. So again, MakerDAO, they're 130, 140, 150%. So that you take on more risk there. So we end up with a better stable coin, and we end up with a better, sort of lending, a lending profile for most users. So you want to use whatever the best tool is, right? So if you say, hey, I only use Coinbase and I got to get to dollars. Okay, well then, USDC has its merits there, right? So you want to use the right tool. So it's not one thing is best for everything, but LL offers a better experience in whichever capacity for a huge amount of users across the planet.
Amazing. Yeah. What a great answer. Actually, really, it makes such great sense, to have a zero interest, and you guys, what you have is probably just a small initial fee as well, and you get zero interest. So, and I'm assuming as well, you mentioned, there's no repayment schedule as well?
Correct. So there is the origination, and it'll go between a 0.5 and 5%.
Yeah.
And it's also kind of tiered with the redemptions, and that has to go with trying to maintain those pegs and allowing it to either encourage lending or discourage lending. So that's where that fee adds. Now that fee gets paid out to the loan holders though. So that goes to the platform. So
Yeah.
again, that's one of those other facets where, again, whatever Circle makes, Circle keeps. Whatever happens on the LL platform, that gets paid out to the loan holders, right? So on the repayment schedule, there is none, because you're essentially loaning from yourself. So every vault is individual. So no one's loaning off your vault. You're not loaning your vault out to other people. Your vault is your own position. So you're essentially maintaining it yourself. So you're the loan, the borrower, you're both sides of this. So no one needs to take a cut off of it, essentially, right? Like you're managing it yourself. The platform runs in a decentralized way. And I always make the joke, there's no building, there's no mower, there's no person at the counter. You're handling it all yourself. So there's no one to pay. So that fee again stays in the platform for those users. And then for yourself, as long as you maintain the collateral, like I said, that's the idea of having a collateral backing. As long as that collateral stays above 110, position just stays open. Everything's fine. Wherever you spent the USDL, whatever you're doing, however you're managing that position, as long as essentially there's enough collateral for the USDL that exists in the world, we're right as rain.
Amazing. Love that answer. Yeah, and by the way, I was also reading the white paper, and I saw that you guys mentioned that there's built-in incentives for early adoption. Can you elaborate on what are they?
Yeah, there's a couple that are really, really interesting. So there's one that lasts a little longer, but it's stronger in the beginning, and then two that are timed out. So the first one is the redemptions. So redemptions don't turn on until 14 days after the launch of contracts. So for users, there's a big arbitrage opportunity there. So it'll be less stable, and that's designed to make sure that there's not basically like radical swings in redemption, and to make sure that we're getting as much USDL out in the market to start getting liquidity and kind of bootstrapping the network, make sure that people can take loans and spend it. So that's that process there early. But that means that, again, that USDL is going to be less stable. So if you're one of those people that can understand the LPs and the pricing, there's a lot of value to be had there and taking advantage of those arbitrage. The other one that's a little simpler is that, similar to people who've done like yield farming or providing liquidity and all these things, there's an LP incentive. So whenever you go provide liquidity in PLS USDL, that's the pair on PulseX.
Yeah.
Similar to like what people would see with like the PulseX pair, where you can take those LP tokens, put them in the farm, and get that INC token reward. You can take your LP tokens, put them in the LL dApp, and there's a loan token emission that gets rewarded. And that goes on for the first 42 days. So that's a great way to provide liquidity. You're going to get your own liquidity fee. So you'll still get all the rewards that come from providing LP, but now there's an extra loan emission. So it's like LL's running its own ink farm per se for that first phase. So that's a big part. And then the stability pool. The stability pool, again, is where you stick USDL, take that pulse on liquidation events, which are actually a lot rarer than people think. Liquidity, last I checked, for the calendar year of 2023, had less than 30 total. less than 30 liquidations across the entire platform, and they average between 500 and 1,300 vaults, or they call them troves. Troves open at any time. So when you look at, historically, we always want to be careful, understand what we're doing. It's still DeFi, it's still loans, things like that, but it's much less sensitive than a lot of people initially think. So with the stability pool, there's almost like a halving event similar to Bitcoin, where loan gets paid out again to incentivize that pool. So being really early in the stability pool, we'll have a big loan token payout. Now that again fades off. The same thing with the LP reward. So earlier is better on those things, but the halving in the stability pool will last a little longer.
That makes sense. Love it as well. I guess one of my final questions here, after post launch, what is the future, roadmap that you guys have?
So there's a ton, there's nothing but space and opportunity in crypto. So the first thing is you got to dance with the one that you brought. So we want to make sure that everything on PulseChain is perfect, that things are dialed in, fetch, PulseChain safe. We built some of that extra infrastructure. If you look in the like the analytics that we have in there, that takes running archive nodes. So, it takes some infrastructure to have that, that solid platform and all these extra things up, especially early in a network like PulseChain. So, we have PulseChain safe up for multi-sig. We'll have fetch, the Oracle. So we have, a lot of irons and, a lot of care. PulseChain is something that obviously even before LL was something I spent a lot of time and effort, in a variety of ways. And, so has Dave and Christian, the founders. So it's all PulseChain first, getting those things right. We're, always going to be looking at taking these products, putting them on other chains. There's plenty of things to do for PulseChain. So we're still pretty up in the air only because it's get done what we initially wanted. So again, after October, we'll have everything on chain. We'll be taking care of those things, and we can kind of see, do we need to sort of build out or up from there?
That's a very good point. Yeah, I love it. You mentioned, PulseChain. I just want to ask you kind of like a personal opinion question. What do you think of PulseChain?
It's one of those things. I'm so close to it. Again, I was on the admin side, been there from the beginning, how to Pulse, working with a ton of content creators. I try to help out other teams. A lot of the other builders are, I'm on a first name basis with, spent time with KG from Internet Money, a lot of these guys, spent a lot of time with them. So for PulseChain, again, obviously the SEC issue and all that kind of stuff right off the bat, that's a little tough. But I think PulseChain's doing what we wanted it to do. I just think it's the speed thing, right? Like everyone just it's now. Yeah. Whereas one of the things that a lot of the users haven't seen is people are having to like understand what actual blockchain stuff is. So if you go to most other, like, if you just go grab the average person who's kind of in the PulseChain community, they probably know more about validators than XYZ other chain because it's so much participation, right? Like we have RH Max and Feder, all those guys, Gamma, talking about like infrastructure. So like we're pretty intimate with how the chain runs. So, not to sound like too kind of cliche, but like PulseChain's like the people's chain. Like people are running all this stuff.
True DeFi.
Yeah. I mean, like you had questions about LL, you just messaged me. We talked on voice chat real quick. You're like, hey, let's do an interview. I mean, you just reached out to me, right? Like go reach out to, Hayden or Vitalik or, any of these guys running, these big things on ETH or other chains. Those people are hard to get a hold of if you can at all. Whereas, if you have something, with so much of what goes on PulseChain, you just reach out and touch them. You can talk to these people. They come out, they're very involved. Like we know who a lot of the players are from wanting to get things built and done. So I think for the most part, I wanted to be a part of it. That was my very first thing is I was like, that's what got me to be forward facing. I just want to be a part of the ecosystem and see all these things grow. So I love it. I realize everyone else is just depressed about pricing and stuff like that, but that's bear market news. That stuff always happens. It goes up. It is what it is. So that stuff doesn't bother me like it does most users. I'm just so glad to see this thing building and scaling and protocols coming to life. I mean, that's what I wanted to be a part of.
Absolutely. Well, I love to hear it, and I think that actually wraps it up. I think you've answered all my questions about it. I'm super excited for liquid loans and, obviously Fetch. Huge things are literally revolutionizing PulseChain and crypto as a whole. I feel like, overtaking Ethereum and stuff like that.
I mean, when you look at the volume, exactly, we run this all the time that people don't really use this stuff. It's so much of it is there's this low hanging fruit for, hey, you could get to the next lottery ticket and the next 1,000x, which, hey, Who doesn't want 1,000x? Like I'm not undercutting that, but we sometimes can be pretty quick to miss the forest through the trees. And what's going to be normal for so many users on PulseChain is staying off of exchanges, using DeFi. So I mean, you might have a relatively like beginner or average user using a non-custodial wallet, getting onto PulseX or 9mm or any of these other dexes, buying something on a dex, then coming and participating with LL and taking USDL and then using USDL somewhere else, where a relatively average user might be using 4, 5, 6 different DeFi protocols. That doesn't happen very often. People might hold the coins, they don't use the platforms. I have some maker token. How does the contract work, or what does it do? It goes up. All right, well, cool. And again, hey, just speculate. I mean, there's nothing wrong with just speculation. So what I'm not so much knocking speculation as I am trying to highlight that there's so much use case and development that people can use, where it's multi-sig and all these things. So that's the stuff that really speaks to me. For the most part, the returns in crypto, if you're doing things that are valuable, you're going to end up and to the right to some degree, right? So that's where I think the value is, and I think what kind of will separate PulseChain a bit is how integrated and sort of intimate everybody is with all the workings, right? Like, people are participating, people run validate. Like, I know the people that are running some of these validators. Like, I know who's doing this, and you can see these guys and reach out. So it's a really close group, and it's something really, really amazing to be a part of, especially if you just really care about the tech.
Amazing. Well, I'm happy to be part of crypto as well right now. I feel like we're in the history making of things, lining ourselves up with the bull run. But yeah, I think that is it. Well, thank you very much for being here, WaLLrus. For everyone watching, you can reach out to WaLLrus on his Twitter at WaLLrus Official. He also has a podcast called The Way In with WaLLrus, so you guys can listen to that on Spotify. And I think that is it. We got the head of growth and partnership, part of LiquidLoans. That's liquidloans.io. And it's been a pleasure having you here as well. Thank you very much, sir.
Thanks so much again for the invitation. Appreciate it very much.